Hiya, my name is Aoife Dean and this is the Happy Weight Podcast. First of all, oh my God, can I share with you some ignorant advice that people struggling with eating and weight issues get told? Because I'm like, I feel I want to run like the ignorance awards for people who say super ignorant things. And I think it's also about like, I think I'm really good at what I do, but like, don't come to me for carpentry, that's not my field. I don't know much about it. I wish I did, but I don't. Equally, I sometimes think there's people, even to be honest, GPs, because they have to deal with a lot of different, areas of medical stuff. And a lot of GPs and doctors have told me they either done half a day or one day of nutrition in their entire training. So I feel sometimes, of course, there's amazing ones, lovely ones. I have clients who are ones. I have people who refer to me that are lovely ones, etc. But basically, I'll cut to the chase. I had a woman this morning and she started on one of the injectables, and with that, a super low calorie diet. And she said that I think the plan must be visual or something like that. And she was like, my 2-year-old nephew has a dinner plate that size. And it's just so ignorant, because all of this stuff is like, oh, wow, eating less, hadn't considered that one, and I have another client and she's in her 60s, right? She struggled with eating and weight her entire life. And recently when she was at the GP said to her, why don't you just eat a boiled egg every time you're hungry? It's like, okay, grand, brilliant. Wow. And then another client, the doctor kept pointing out, like, you live by that park and you live by that park. You could go for a walk. And I think of all the things. I do think, mothers saying, go for a walk, or why don't you go for a walk, or like telling someone with clearly chronic, ongoing eating or weight issues, why don't you go for a walk? It's like, shut the hell up. So anyways, if you have any ignorant stories, I would love to hear them. Today, we're going to be talking about the scales. The scales is such it's such a difference, right? Using a scales is a big part of diet mentality. It's a big part of the weight problem world. Moving away from using a scales is a big statement that you are not planning on being in the weight problem world or in the kind of diet culture for long, that you really are keen on where you're going. Because, I think especially as women, we're just in this eternal little cycle of trying to lose weight, since the age of 10 or whatever. For me anyways, it's like, oh, you're a woman. That's what you do. You try and become slimmer all the time. And so we're just in that little loop going around and around. But because we started it so young or whatever, it's like we've never maybe stopped to say, hey, wait a second. What's the outcome of this? Where am I getting to? What's the woman I'm becoming? Or what kind of person am I going to be around food? Because I think if we really thought about it, it's like, you don't want to be a prize winning dieter in 10 years time. You don't want to be awesome at never eating carbs. Can you imagine how awful holidays would be, or anywhere where you're near gorgeous pastries or even yummy spuds, or that's miserable. So it's like, you don't actually want to be a brilliant low carber or a brilliant dieter. If you really got to pick exactly what you wanted out of a catalogue, I think you'd like to be someone with a really cool relationship with food, but you also honor your body. You know that you are an individual creature. There's no one has ever had the same body, the same metabolism, the same taste buds, the same body composition as you ever before, ever again. So the foods you need on a typical day, physically, emotionally, socially, are very unique to you. And so the dream would be that one day, one of my mantras was no matter where I am, what country I'm in, who I'm around, what season it is, I just eat in a way that I enjoy, or, I'm always the same weight, or there was definitely ones that my mantra started with, no matter where I am, what season, etc., that I just always have a nice relationship with food. So I think we want to work backwards from that, like that's the goal. And then when you think about it, hopping on and off of a scales to see how many grams or kilos or pounds or whatever you're going up and down, like you are not a fluctuating mass of fat. Did I give an intro to this podcast? Maybe I didn't. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place. By the way, the reason we're talking about the scales today is because I got a lovely message on Instagram and it was like, "Hi Aoife, thank you for your wonderful podcast. I never heard something like it. Despite being in the realm of not dieting, intuitive eating for over 15 years and still not at a weight I am comfortable with. So from listening, I realized I still secretly monitor and criticize myself all the time and even secretly count the calories in my head. I used to step on the scale every day and now I stopped doing this, but feel a bit terrified because last time I didn't control my weight for longer, I put on a lot of weight despite thinking what I was eating, despite thinking I was eating what my body wanted. I couldn't find an episode about the scales and I was wondering if there was an episode addressing this and you could point me to it." So I think I've jumped on and off about this topic. So I was like, why not just do a whole episode about it, because it is really important. And the first thing I'd like to say from my own perspective is there is not a hope I would be out of my eating and weight issues if I didn't stop weighing myself. So I have not really weighed myself in a constant weighing myself way since 2012. There was one time that I got some online prescription or something and I had to give my weight. And weirdly, actually, I used to obsess about my weight. I used to journal about it, going to bed at night. I know, creepy. Even down to the 0.5 kilos. And actually years later in 2018, when I had to get this prescription, I jumped on the body composition scales and I was the exact number that I had secreted all those years. But obviously when I was being a lunatic, obsessing about my weight, all I was doing was going further from it. And so then by 2016, part of the reason why I got to that exact weight is because I wasn't using the scales. So the scales really throws you off course. Like I was saying earlier, you have to think about your goal. It's a bit like Oprah says, most people don't get their goal because they don't know what it is. So if your goal is like, oh, I'm going to have a low calorie diet so I lose a few pounds before the wedding in June or whatever, it's kind of like, I don't know, in business stuff or entrepreneur stuff, they're like, the why needs to be pretty big. Like the why needs to benefit, like why you're doing something, why you have a goal needs to benefit like your family, your friends, like all the things that are important to you in your life. This goal has to feed into it. And if you think about it, say us being on a low calorie diet or us being like X amount of weight on the scales, that doesn't feed into anything. Because like if we're X amount of weight on the scales and we're tortured from what we're eating, like we're miserable, we're restricting foods, we're weak, we're sad, we're doing all the wrong nutrition for our body, which we're inevitably doing if you're following a diet. That's not going to help your job. Like, as in, if a career is important to you, that's not going to make you sharp on Zoom calls or sharp in meetings. That's not going to make you come home like brimming with energy to play with your kids or whatever. Like, as in, like dieting and stuff actually harms a lot of your values in life that are important to you. So, like I said, if we're really thinking about the goal that we want and the woman we want to become or the man we want to become, or what the goal would look like, on holidays, at home, on a boring day, on a hormonal day, on a stress time, on a busy time, in all these different environments, who would we be as a person? What would our relationship with food be in all these different environments and moods? What would our relationship be with ourselves if we did gain weight or if our clothes are tighter? Like, you have to have the kind of vision of what success looks like. And we also, of course, have to tie that in with if we do know anyone who we think has a good enough relationship with food and with their body, or doesn't seem to struggle or doesn't seem to have food noise or anything like that. Like, how would they react the day after an overeating day? Or how would they react the day after realizing they'd gained weight or whatever. So that's your goal, having a clear picture of you with that persona and you with that lovely positive relationship with food where you eat things that taste good and feel good, and then you're not interested in eating other people's stuff, and you're certainly not going to be disempowered enough to eat something just because someone somewhere said, oh, you should be eating this. Like, you are minding your own body, your own signals, etc. You're not a lamb to the slaughter, just, following any old advice. And another thing, I thought of this last night when I really needed to be going to sleep. But anyway, this is what would be going through my head. But, I think it's important to remember, I don't know, do you know this? But when I was doing the masters, I learned that actually being over-informed about nutrition is a risk factor for weight problems. So that means that if you've a zillion different things coming into your Instagram about eat this and what you need to do in the perimenopause and what you need to do in the menopause and what you need to do this. See, all you're doing is layering on the detail of what you should be doing. And the dark side of that means the more you layer on the detail, the more you're constructing this perfect nutritional picture, which is obviously BS. Like, no one knows the exact grams of anything you need today. Well, then the dark side of all of that is the more guilt you're going to have. So there is no surprise why people who are over-informed about nutrition tend to develop worse and worse weight problems, because it means they've got more and more guilt. And people tell me crazy stuff like saying, oh, aren't you meant to eat this before that? And it's like, God, we're really splitting hairs about the stuff that isn't important here, especially with nutrition and health, because of all things that's important, like in the nutrition world, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of importance is you're not overeating. So in my opinion, you need to eat whatever the hell you need to eat so that you don't need to go back to the cupboard in half an hour, an hour's time. You need to eat whatever the hell you need to eat so that you can let your body digest that and get back to hunger before you eat the next thing. That needs to be your priority, is not overeating, because whatever little fiddly bits you do with nutrition are never going to have as much of a profound effect as being a healthy weight, because that's the most important thing health-wise and everything. Gosh, I'm really running all over the place with this. So 2 stories, and these stories are literally from the last 2 days with clients, actually. So obviously the stuff comes up all the time, but these are 2 stories, right, about how the scales will screw you over, or focusing on weight will screw you over. So, I had a girl that was feeling really, really well. And I think she's only 2 weeks into the program, or 2 or 3 weeks into the program. And she was feeling super well. So, I wouldn't really advise people to weigh themselves, but obviously some people are coming from a history of weighing themselves every morning. So, I take the hit on once every 21 days at the beginning, I'll talk them out of that again. But anyways, I get why she did it, is all I'm saying. And she'd lost a load of weight. And then her next day was totally messed up. So she had 3 really cool weeks of following all my advice, having a really nice time with food. Not all easy. Of course, there's lots of stuff to overcome as well. Geez. But she had been ticking along grand, and she'd been doing really, really well. And she'd been cooler than ever she had ever been, probably since she was a kid, with chocolate and sweets and normal stuff, really self-regulated with them, really regulating her appetite and weight and stuff like that. So she was doing super. And then it all went to pot. And that's a weird one, isn't it? Because you'd think that, okay, the scale said she was doing really well. So that's awesome, isn't it? As in, that would inspire her to do even more, but it doesn't. And I don't fully know the mechanics of that at all. But basically, if you jump on the scales, whether it says something good or it says something bad, it has a huge likelihood of messing you up. And I think sometimes a big problem with what I work in is I work mainly with women, and we can be very emotional. And that's really not what we need to reach a goal. So I love that saying that if you want to capture the island, you have to burn your boat. So it means you're getting on that island and you're capturing it and there's no way back. Okay. And so I think it's the same with where we're headed with our eating and our weight. There's no going back. So we're not going to be fiddling around with days of maybe I can't, maybe I won't, maybe nothing works for me. That's not an option when you're really serious about a goal. So when we're really serious about our goal, we have to pick ourselves up and work with what we have. Through the good days, through the bad days, whatever it is, we get very, very skilled at working with what we have, working with the day that we have, the schedule we have, the energy levels we have, the situation we're in, and none of it will ever be perfect. We're never going to be heading into a Monday perfect. The Wednesday is never going to be perfect schedule-wise, energy-wise, food-wise, doesn't matter. The skill is working with what you have. So another weird thing, right? You know, going back to if you want to capture the island, you have to burn the boat, is it's a very interesting but common thing that people do. That the day that they're feeling the fattest, the heaviest, the mankiest is the day that they'll jump on the scales. And it's like, what exactly are you up to here? Because are you out to prove that you can move forward? Or are you out to prove that you can't move forward? Because people can have a foot in two camps. And consciously, they're saying, oh, I would like to change. But their actions show that they're actually trying to prove how they will never change. And that's something, because if we've got a history of telling ourselves, I'm prone to weight problems, nothing works for me, I'll never change. Well, what you have to be aware of is your brain works way harder to be right than it does to be happy. So like, part of our sabotage will be our brain trying to show us examples of, you see, you're not moving forward. You'll never change. Because the most logical thing to do, right, is if you were serious about your goal, if you wanted to become a lighter weight, you wanted to move forward with your relationship with food, that would mean that on a day that you're feeling heavy would be the day that you'd take the most action. So it's not the day that you'd get the most emotional. It's not the day that you'd try and drill down to that bad feeling by jumping on the scales and telling yourself, you see, I've clearly messed up. I'm never moving forward, whatever it is. So it's kind of like, be very conscious of that. Like, to get to our goal, right? If our goal is to feel lighter, well, it means that there's going to be millions and zillions of little times where our body feels a bit heavy and we take a little action to make it feel better. Our body feels a bit heavy and we take a little action to make it feel better. Same goes for weight maintenance. Weight maintenance is the exact same as weight loss. It's all about just listening to the signals that will bring you back and keep you at your ideal weight. So that's one I definitely would be kind of to watch yourself about, right? You know, the days that you're feeling heavy, don't go near the scales, and pretty much don't go near the scales ever. Just 2 or 3 more stories, because I know the whole question from that person was, what will I do instead? I'm getting to it. Honestly, I just want to really properly motivate you to never use them again. So another client I was on the phone to today, and I started working with her last September. She did her 12-week program. So now she's kind of just on a monthly call to check in. So most of my clients, like I would tell people that, like, if we're going to overcome a problem of the lifetime, even biologically, you'd want to give it 2 years. You know, you'd want to give it 2 years to realign your set point, realign your behaviors and all of that. So a lot of my clients would stay on after the program. So this client, anyway, she's been in a super place. She's just been putting one foot in front of the other, doing what makes her feel really well. That has meant like more exercise. She's doing a lot of exercise, loving the strength, loving the fitness. She's eating beautiful food, but she's being a normal person. She's being a normal wife, a normal mom, a normal friend who's sharing lovely food with lovely people. She's not being a weirdo, and she's letting go of the weight bit by bit. And so now it's at the point where a lot of people are commenting. And it fucked her up, basically. So it's a bit like the last story, like, why would that mess you up, you'd say? But it just brings back all the ghosts of the past, all the ghosts of when you were here before and it all went to pot soon after. So we've lots of repeated thoughts that turned into beliefs. And then, like I said, the big one we're up against is like, yeah, but you'll never actually change. Things always go well for a while and then you go back. So we've all those ghosts and demons of old beliefs trying to elbow in and change our behaviors. So that's what happened to this lady. And it's really weird, right? Because that, like, there was a kind of crescendo or whatever of people saying it to her that tipped her over the edge to go back thinking about her weight. And it's when you go thinking about your weight is where you mess up your eating. So then she kind of started eyeing up her body more in the mirror. And she's like, there's this one awful angle. And just like I was saying, similar behavior to feeling her worst and jumping on the scales. She stood in the most worst angle and really eyed herself up and down and made herself feel awful. So that's one of those stories that whether it's a positive story about our weight, i.e. people complimenting us, or it's a bad story of our weight, i.e. her standing in the mirror saying, I'm not where I should be, either one of them will mess up your eating and weight. And I'm sure this will come to me after recording this podcast, but I remember sitting in my hypnosis course in Amsterdam when I was getting my diploma, and there was something the teacher said that it's like, oh my God, that's how I successfully changed my eating and weight, because I didn't make it about weight. I made it about the next 20 minutes. That's what I made it about. I just made it about put one foot in front of the other. How does your body feel? How can you feel better? How can you eat like a slim person? So I focused on all of that, not my weight, because weight is just too much of a big billboard topic in our brain that's got a heavy, heavy history, heavy past experiences. And like for anyone, it's like the more someone focuses their weight on their weight, the bigger their eating will go out the window. So I will have clients all the time that they're trucking along grand, and then because they're human, they'll have a day where their clothes feel tight or they feel heavier, and they'll freak out and they'll be like, the program isn't working, nothing's working, blah. And then it's like, you know, their eating will then cause weight gain. So it's like, with the program, they were trucking along grand and they were going to get to where they were going, but their freak out changed their behaviors and made being stuck a self-fulfilling prophecy. So get out of the storyline about where you are with your weight. And like I was saying to that client, right, like, you know, I was going to say, especially this woman, not especially this woman, every woman. I was like, you are not a fluctuating lump of fat, and neither am I. We're not just two big lumps that go up and down, and that's all we have to offer to the planet is us as a lump changing and being lighter and heavier, being week on week. I was like, you are a mother, you are a wife, you are a friend, you are a colleague, you have dreams and hopes and goals, you have things you want to achieve, you have where you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years time, and the scales and your weight do not come into that. Yes, how you feel does. Like your ability to be confident today, your ability to have high self-esteem and not berate yourself, they certainly come into your future goals. Your ability to read how your body is feeling and make decisions that will make your body feel a bit better in 20 minutes time and be very unique in that approach, that like equals, you know, you playing with your grandkids in 20 years time, or you, I don't know, hiking through China or whatever it is you want to get up to in the future, you feeling well and you being mentally well because of how you talk to yourself and how you treat yourself, that comes into your goals, not your weight. Your weight does not come into it. And when I went into that spiel with her, she was like, thank you for that. But also I'm so pissed off because another thing she was struggling with today, even though she's months and months in, is she's like, you know, she's like, you're literally the only person I can talk to, because in my life, I've the people who seem to have it easy, you know, the people who just don't have weight problems, get a McDonald's for their lunch if they want a McDonald's for their lunch, but like they don't have food noise, I would say. And then she's like, then you've pretty much 90% of people who are going on about the next diet they're starting, going on about good foods, bad foods. So she was like, I am surrounded in good food, bad food people all day, every day. And then I was like to her, look, we are in an obesogenic environment. That's what I learned in my master's as well, that the UK and Ireland are an obesogenic environment. We don't have a good food culture. We don't celebrate food. We actually call it bad or good. We have no food culture. We have a diet culture. And that is why if you go with the flow in the UK and Ireland, you will become obese. So I was like, you are going against the grain of everything. By you minding your health and you being intuitive and you listening to what your body needs and you having a good relationship with food, you are going against the grain of everyone else. So that's something else that we have to know we're kind of up against. But yeah, she was like, I'm so pissed off because you're right. Like most of the fabulous women I know are reducing themselves to this fluctuating lump. And it's like, you're not a fluctuating lump. You actually have a lot to offer this world and to this life, no matter what weight you are. And like that woman was saying, like, my kids love me no matter what weight I am. And it's like, of course they do. And the weird thing is that another reason why the less we make this about weight, the more likely it is we'll reach our goal, is because self-esteem is the arch enemy to comfort eating. So us being like, yeah, do you know what? I am a powerful woman. Do you know what? I have like exciting plans for my life and I am going to go get them. Like the more we're like that, the more we're in a kind of like inspired go-getter mode. Like that is the opposite of comfort eating. Like comfort eating is wallowing. I shouldn't be here. What's the point of any success if I'm not the weight I want to be? Like all that grossness. So anyways, I think I've fully, hopefully covered, like, please don't go near the scales because it's actually gonna make you continuously be warped with your eating. But what do we do instead, right? So actually, as one of my clients said this week, she was like, don't worry, I'm not going back. Like, she's like, your program is a bit of a red pill, blue pill. And like, you know, it's like there's two options and I'm not going back to where I was. I'm not going back to the good food, bad food kind of people. But equally, you know, so to answer this Instagram DM, what do we do instead? And so I think what we're doing instead, right, is, and I think it comes into everything I just said about the scales. Your body is the past anyway. It's the past, right? It's your war wounds. Like as in there might be a lump of fat on your thighs that came from a really down day last April or something, or the April before last or whatever. Like your body is entirely the past. And the reason I know I'm in a good place now is the only thing I ever feel if I gain weight is compassion. Because say the last time I felt bigger than my average was when I was in a really unsuitable relationship, but I was too scared to leave it. So I was drinking my body weight in red wine and I was eating his diet and I was eating all the snacks he ate. And it wasn't me. Like I wasn't being me and I was certainly drowning my sorrows in red wine. So when I looked in the mirror at the bigger Aoife, I was like, God love that Aoife on the couch in Clon at his house, being really sad, but not knowing what to do with it and trying to drink and eat my way out of it. Like, that's really sad that I was in that pit, you know? So I'm like, oh my God, why am I getting emotional? I'm like, oh, okay, take a second. But anyways, our body is the past and it's all the stuff we've been through. And then our behaviors and our mindset are the future. So that's why you don't want, there's literally no need and no point to be looking in the mirror, grabbing, you know, the lumps of fat and everything, because that's the past. And there's no point jumping on the scales because that's the past. And your weight, what weight you will be in 6 months' time and in 1 year's time and 10 years' time or whatever, it's not dependent on what the scales are saying, because there's someone around the country right now who's done the most extreme, stupid diet that even yourself would never go near. And, you know, they've ripped apart their body's glycogen, water stores, whatever else, and they're down in weight. So maybe today, yeah, they're lighter than you are. But in a month's time, 3 months' time, certainly 6 months' time, they're going to balloon way bigger than you are today. So the scales today and what weight everyone is today means nothing about their future. How you're acting means everything. So how you're acting, how you're treating yourself. Like I said, the place you're giving weight in your life versus where you're giving self-esteem and positive coaching and coaching yourself towards your goal is a big deal. And then how you're acting around food. So again, if someone's being a weirdo with food today, like in terms of like they'd love a sandwich and for their lunch and their belly would feel really nice after it and they know that would set them up for the school run and everything else, but they're like, no, I think I ate too much carbs over the weekend, so I need to restrict. Like that's a weirdo diet behavior that has a high chance of leading to overeating at some stage of tonight, tomorrow, or the rest of the week. Whereas if someone was like, I know precisely the right prescription for food that I need today for my lunch, and it happens to be a sandwich. And then you're basically, you're really being true to what will physically feel better in an hour's time. And, you know, what I'm picking up from that lady's Instagram DM as well is this is where the lifetime of good food, bad food really messes us up. Because like if I had €1 for every time someone was like, I make all home cooked meals, I never get takeaways. And I'm like, that does not matter a damn. Like we can overeat anything. Good foods, bad foods don't come into anything. In fact, like for me, kind of changing to this new way of eating, like when I was testing the waters with all of this, like I've probably said many times, I was in Lisbon at the time and I was just bowled over by the fact, okay, I'll just assume that just like if I'm not cold, I don't need to put on a jumper. Maybe if my belly isn't telling me I'm hungry, I don't need to eat. So then when my belly was hungry, say I'd have 2 pastel de natas, the Portuguese custard tarts for breakfast, then see how long it takes for that to run out and be hungry again, then have a burger, then see how long that would take to run out, then have something else yummy, see how long that would take to run out. And what blew my mind is I was going to bed feeling way lighter than any of the days where I was like, pick the good foods, for God's sake, eat the cottage cheese for fear you'll want a biscuit. And it's like, you know, all of that as well is you're actually eating out of fear. Like if you're eating X because you're really scared you'll be tempted by Y, that's not a good relationship with food. Like the foods you love and the foods you are literally willing to be present and enjoy as you're eating, they will never cause a weight problem. The foods that you're mindless about or you're eating in urgency or fear or like I said, I don't totally love this. You know, it's kind of like, say, someone getting into a relationship because they're afraid no one else is out there. Like, that's not a great relationship. So equally, you having the Slimbo or whatever because you're too scared of sourdough, that's not a good relationship with food. So we have to, I suppose, catch ourselves when we're eating like that. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, my trail of thought keeps going today. But yeah, so what we're doing anyway is our behaviors are showing us our future. So are you being really honest about your emotional needs, your social needs, your physical needs with food today, and you are more tuned in to like what the version of you with no eating and weight issues would eat like today? And are you doing your best job at copying that? And yeah, like I said, that's got nothing to do with good or bad foods. So when you're clocking your progress at the end of a week, or at the end of the week, or at the end of the month, I suppose, the first thing you'll always have to do is if your clothes are tight, if you're feeling heavy, the first thing you have to say to yourself, well, that's fair. Because if you say that's fair, right, your brain will go off and find all the reasons why what maybe contributed to this heavy feeling and also what is possibly the room for improvement. Victim mindset is a huge thing in dieting. So that would be, this isn't fair. I make all my own home cooked meals. And it's like, look, you can argue that till the cows come home or you can become your ideal weight, but you can't do both. I don't know, did I ever tell you the story of I had this one woman and she used to go to all the top professionals in London. And she came to me basically saying that she had all this proof she had a shit metabolism. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Do you want to keep going with that story, or do you want to become your ideal weight? Because if we want to become our ideal weight, like I remember thinking this myself, maybe I have the world's worst metabolism. Grand. Let's go with that. But this is the only body I have. So this is the one I have to make things work with. And so, like I said, it's like, if, I suppose whatever you're feeling in your clothes, always think about, how would that be fair? So if you're not blaming the menopause, the perimenopause, you're not blaming your metabolism, you're not blaming your childhood, you're not blaming your meds, how might it make sense that your body didn't get an opportunity to burn more energy this week? And so, or this month or whatever. So I remember the last time I slipped into that victim mindset, I was like, well, this is it now, Aoife. My clothes were feeling tight. And I was like, I was 37 or whatever I was at the time. And I was like, sure, you're late 30s now. Sure, there has to be a little bit of biology in this. It's not you. And then I was like, okay, if it wasn't my age, what might it be? And I was like, well, I didn't really do much exercise over the last 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, fair enough. So your body mightn't have had opportunities to use up some of the energy that it was eating, considering you have a sedentary job. So be big enough and bad enough to accept the feedback without getting emotional. So however your body is feeling today, it's just feedback. And like I said, it's a huge step forward if you don't equate it to good or bad foods. You actually equate it to how you were feeling during the week. So maybe you do remember sitting down to a dinner and not being remotely hungry. Maybe you do remember going to bed and feeling pretty full. And it's like, do you know what? Like, Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, we don't have to do any of this urgently, but it's great to know the things we're working on. So we can be like, look, I was really upset that day or whatever, and I definitely didn't listen to my signals. So that's something that, I'll pivot and tweak now the next time I'm in a bad mood. I won't have a perfect day by any means, but maybe I could just shave off some of the useless crap that I ate that wasn't actually contributing to my emotions. Maybe there was a little bit of off the wagon thinking versus let's medicate my bad emotions today with helpful tastes and feelings. But that's a very different ball game to today's a bad day, I'll just eat whatever I want, which actually doesn't help our emotions and how we're feeling. So yeah, I hope I've given you enough clarity on the things to look back on that are maybe an insight in where you're going if you're not using the scales. So first of all, it doesn't matter where you've been. It's that today your behaviors are in line with the you're becoming. So a person who doesn't have any eating and weight issues, you're slim, you're free, you have a positive relationship with your body, you trust it, you listen to it, you've no interest in feeling uncomfortable or anything like that. And if your clothes are tight, if you are feeling a bit heavier, always ask, okay, that's really fair. I understand what my body is up to. And what might have contributed to it? Where might I not have been helping out my body this week? Where might I have thrown it under the bus a little bit or not given it adequate opportunities to use up the food it already had, or given my muscle or my metabolism or bones a bit of a help through exercise? So yeah, I hope today's episode helped. The Happy Hypno Weight program is a way of kind of getting this mindset without working one-to-one with me. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope this episode helped. Thank you.